Hello, everybody, and welcome to Stop Being Polite. We are here on behalf of Silent Podcast, where we are anything but silent. I am Katie. Kari handed me the main host reins tonight. She trusts me. Kari, how are you?
Good. Do you know how, like, I had to stop myself from saying something after the intro went? I'm like, oh, it's not me. Even though we literally just addressed it.
We did just talk about it.
I was ready to do it anyways. Like, that song is ingrained in my brain that just, like, after it, I have to mess up an intro after. But you did great. You crushed it.
Thank you. It was my first intro. I was a little nervous, but thank you. We decided that I'm going to take the reins for this tonight because I wrote 5 full pages of notes about this show because that's how passionate I feel about the Real World New Orleans and this reboot. So here we are. We're here to talk about it. We're really excited. We've decided that anything with the word real in it is something that we have to podcast about together. So Kari, how's your day? Are you excited?
I am very excited. So if you listen to the Real Housewives podcast, know that I've been watching solely the Real Housewives for like legit the last 6+ months of my life. I don't even know the timeline of it. But when Katie was like, will you do this with me? I was like, hell yeah. So I have gotten through almost 19 full episodes of the show in like 3 or 4 days. The original season is on the top of my brain. I watched the new episode. I love this first episode. I am so excited for the rest of the season. So yeah, I'm just like ready for it. And I don't think that I watched, well, we had talked about this earlier, but like in 2000, I was in 6th grade. So like Real World wasn't really on my radar. The first one I remember was Las Vegas with like Trishelle and Alton and them. So I was like 2 seasons later than this. So I'm really enjoying watching this for the first time. And then like very soon after watching them 22 years later, it's just like so cool. So I'm so excited about all this.
Yeah, this season has been, and you may have heard us talk about this a little bit on the Cool Water Show, where we also podcast together and talk about Real Housewives. But this has been my favorite season of the Real World New Orleans, of the Real World period. It was a really, really popular season back when it aired in the year 2000. This is just, I don't know why the season just always resonated with me, but it has lived rent free in my brain ever since the year 2000. I'm a little older than you, unfortunately for me. So I was like of the age where I'm like elder millennial on the cusp. And I feel like this season like really hit for like the Gen Xers, elder millennials, geriatric millennials, some people call us, which is kind of rude, actually. Yeah, it's pretty rude. But I'm just so happy. I've been checking Paramount Plus like religiously as soon as they added the Real World seasons onto the app, just to see if they would add the season, and it was never there, and it was just devastating to me. And then when I heard that this was coming out, I had hope that it would reappear, and it did last Wednesday. And like you, I have crushed the entire show this weekend. I completely finished. I kind of want to go back and watch a little bit more, but we are also going to be recapping the original series in little chunks. So just to give everybody the full context of these, I almost said characters, but they're really not characters. They're just people on the show. But we really feel like we know them.
We felt obligated also to come out tonight with like the new one. I know the order might seem a little weird that like we didn't recap the original season first. But they only gave us a week, and
they did.
By the time we like sorted our lives out, that we decided we wanted to be like the first people to put content out there for you on this season. So it came out today. You're getting us talking about it today, and then I think Saturday is when we're going to talk more about like the original season. But in case it seems like, why are you doing it in this order? This is exactly why, because Paramount Plus gave us a week to watch the season, and I wasn't ready for it.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, we did it. We finished it. Well, for the most part, but like
4 episodes left. I will probably finish them tomorrow during my work day. If you work at where I work, that's a joke. I'm going to be working the whole day and not watching.
Yeah. Kari will be working hard all day and watching after work. Awesome. So let us get into it. So the episode starts with like a montage of scenes from old Real World seasons. We saw some Seattle, we saw some Miami. I think we might have seen some Boston in there. We saw some Hawaii, and it just really hit me in this moment, like what a cultural phenomenon the real world
Mhm.
was. All of these moments. We had Dan saying, you know, hurry to open my mail, you stupid bitch. We had Steven slapping Irene. We had Tech jumping in the pool saying I'm naked. It's just like the amount of cultural impact the real world had in general in the early 2000s. It really had a chokehold on us all. And it just like kind of made me emotional to watch. I know that's a really weird thing to say, but like it brought me back to this time of like 1999, the year 2000, pre 9/11, youth,
Yes.
especially I think with the music that they interlaced with these scenes. We had Backstreet Boys, we had
Mhm.
Christina Aguilera, we had so much that it just like really put me in a time machine back to the very early 2000s.
And really, I mean, anyone listening to this podcast or even knows of silent podcasts, like the reason that we're able to do this today is because of the real world. Like the real world was the reality show that caused every other reality TV show to
Yep.
happen. Like, and it deserves to have all of the homage paid to it. Like, we're not worthy. Um, and so it was cool, like seeing the way that they introduced it. Also, just like watching the original season and then this one makes me want to go back and watch every single Real World season.
Oh, me too. 1,000%. I mean, the casting of just the real world in general is unmatched. And we talk about
Mhm.
a lot, and you're totally right. We talk a ton about reality TV in general, on silent podcasts, on Twitter, just in general. But like, there would be none of these shows if it were not for the real world. The real world started airing in 1992. It was way ahead of its time, way before Survivor, way before Big Brother, way before Real Housewives. It was like the only reality show that existed. And it was really the first of its kind. And the casting was just incredible. And even back in the early 90s and into the 2000s, some of the subjects they talked about are subjects that we're still talking about today in reality TV
Mhm.
that are still getting a lot of attention. So it's just kind of incredible that they found all of these amazing people. Not they're not all amazing people, but the characters that they found and the people that they found to be cast in the show were just so dynamic and amazing to watch. There was never a dud back then. Never a dud of a season. In the later years, we had a lot of duds, but in these early years, pre social media, pre influencer casting, like unmatched.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. And I think also part of the reason for that is because it was the only show like this. I mean, like,
Mhm.
you had Road Rules around the same time as well. So, what you had like two reality TV shows that all these 20 somethings are dying to be cast on that um, I think it's at one point in this episode, didn't Melissa make a comment that like there was like 60 women that kind of like fit her role in the show, which was being the
Yep.
woman of color, like, and that was in the finalist stage. It doesn't even
Mhm.
talk about everywhere else that like with the oversaturation of TV shows we've had, and you have shows that have been on for years upon years, like Survivor, Big Brother, whatever it is, that like I feel like you have to dig a little bit deeper to get
Yep.
quality cast members. But here, you had such a plethora of people to choose from, and their incentive to be on TV, like you said, was not to get Instagram followers, was
Right.
to not to be able to like sell their 10% off deal. You know what I mean? Like you're getting people just because like of the experience. That's
Exactly.
so the quality in comparison unmatched. Absolutely unmatched.
Unmatched. And the other thing is that the casts, when I was young, the cast seemed old to me,
Mhm.
as people in their 20s do when you're in an early teen. But the age cutoff of the real world was 24 for casting, which is wild. And I remember being in high school and being like, oh, I haven't told I'm 24 to get on the real world. Like I think everybody aspired to be on the real world back then. But then like when I hit 24, some people are like, oh, I'm old, I'm 21, or I'm old, I'm 25, I can rent a car. For me, it was like I'm past the stage of being able to be on the real world. That's how I knew I was past my prime.
I'm
It was
washed
like
up.
that much of like a cultural thing at that point where it's like we knew the age range you had to be on. But it was so interesting because it's like a very small age range. It's 18 to 24. That's a very small demo of people. they all just seem so mature. Even watching back,
Mhm.
though, they didn't seem like 22-year-olds or 20-year-olds. They seemed
Right.
much older than that.
I agree 100%. Like when Melissa said that she was 22 because she was calling um, someone a baby for being 21, I was
Hmm.
just like, hold on a second. Like you're
I
only
know.
22. That's crazy to me. Um, yeah, and especially like I'm not sure why you would even cast people under 21 because they can't drink.
Right.
Um, so it's like really a 3-year age window at that point that was like
Yeah. I
really good. And they obviously took people on who are younger. Like I think Julie was 20 throughout all of
think
it.
Julie was 20. Hmm.
But the fact that you have like such a small window and they're able to pull these people with such different backgrounds. I just this has been such a nice reminder of
Ugh,
like this is good reality TV. This is what started all of it for us. And just like thinking of the challenge and stuff and how it spawned off of this and everything, like I'm in a very good mood because of this TV show today.
me too. This energized me. I feel like I haven't seen TV this good in a really long time. And plus, there's like what's nice is that there's no competition element to it. So you really just are seeing like these people interact with each other. And the premise, honestly, in the year 2022 seems boring, but it holds up. Like it's just so good to see these people interacting and just, I don't know, getting to know each other. And you learn so much about these people and the different walks of life that they come from. It's just very wholesome but fascinating. And I just miss it. I miss the real world. I don't think they could ever recreate the magic that they had back then because of all the social media and
Mm.
everything that exists today. But I'm just so glad that we're getting like reboots of these older seasons because I haven't watched LA yet, but I watched the New York Homecoming and it was just as great. It was just as great, but I didn't have as much of a connection to the original season as I do with New Orleans. So this one is really, really hitting the spot.
Nitro is very into the season. I've been teaching him how to stop barking, but that of course requires me like yelling at him to come get a treat. But um, maybe he hears the treat bag. Yeah, there he is. Hi, buddy. I loved like, and not to just jump right into today's episode,
Yeah.
but up until Julie got into the house, just the like warm welcome everyone got, and how you could see like legitimately people um, happy to see each other and reconnect after all those
Yeah.
years, and um, especially seeing someone like Tokyo,
Hmm.
who he was definitely nervous going into it because throughout the original season, the outcast of the group that he said like when Kelly just gave him that like really long hug,
Yeah.
he knew that like this was going to be a worthwhile experience for him. And like I'm sitting there getting emotional just watching these people just like
Me
see each other for the
too.
first time in so long. And I loved how they tried to in a way recreate them coming in how they did originally, but they obviously like left Julie for the end because Julie is the
Yes.
drama. um
Yeah, I loved it. I
just like
loved it
I
all.
just felt so warm and fuzzy inside and like happy for these people that one happy that they chose to do this because I think it could be very overwhelming and
Hmm.
almost like in a way I might even feel guilty of like I don't really talk to these people and we had this like very intense shared experience together and it's been 22 years. Like how have I let 22 years go by without seeing
Exactly.
any of them? So I know me personally be like very wary about going in there, but it just seemed like so natural for all of them to see each other
Hmm.
again. Well, 6 of the 7 of them see each other again, and it just was like nice. It just I don't know a better way to describe it. It was just nice.
It really was super nice. So let's jump into it. So like you said, the cast has not, they made it very clear the cast has not kept in touch over the last 22 years. So just to kind of go over where they are now, Melissa is married to the guitarist of a band called Glassjaw, which is, I'm from Long Island originally. So they are very popular in Long Island. They're a hardcore band. They just did like a reunion tour and it was like a really wild thing out here. Every single person went to every single show, every single night. They're very popular, Long Island music scene. So she lives on Long Island. She's a stay-at-home mom. I think she has 2 kids. I believe believe she also podcasts. Her podcast might be on hiatus. I have tried to follow her since the Real World. She's my favorite Real World cast member of all time ever. Her, and then Coral's my second. We also have David, who has changed his name to Tokyo. So if we refer to Tokyo, we're talking about David. He is still in Chicago. It sounds like he's a writer, but still plays music. I tried to look into his YouTube channel that he mentioned, and there is no content on there. So I don't know what really happened there. Jamie, still living in Chicago, also with Tokyo. Surprised I haven't really kept in touch. They're pretty close to each other in proximity, but he seems like he's married with at least one kid. I saw one kid in their intro package, so I'm not sure. Then we have Julie. She's in Milwaukee. She's married with kids. Kelly is in Vancouver. She's married to Scott Wolf of Party of Five fame. If anybody was a Party of Five fan,
I had
she's
to
married
look
to
him
him.
up when Melissa was like, she's married to Scott Wolf. Like, we all know who he is. And I was like, do we? 1 second, Melissa. And I'm like Googling it.
Mm-hmm. I think I knew that because Scott Wolf had been on Watch What Happens Live, and they talked about him being married to Kelly from the Real World. So like I knew it from, thank you, Brava. Thank you, Andy, expanding my horizons. Danny lives in Vermont in a cabin, and I believe he is single. And Matt is in Phoenix, Arizona, who's married with 6 children. So he's been busy after his stint of abstinence for his first however many years of his life. So we get an intro from Melissa. She gives us a lot of insight on how she's feeling and how she felt back in the day when she was cast. She felt like she was cast to be the female person of color, kind of like as you mentioned earlier, that she was up against a number of people, and she kind of like won out at the end. But she kind of realized that she wanted to step outside of that particular spotlight and feels like she got picked out of, I think she said 30,000 brown girls was her word. And she feels bad that she kind of like didn't do more with that. Any thoughts on Melissa's kind of intro or the revisit to Melissa that we had in the current day versus former times?
She is so fucking witty.
She
I could
is.
listen to her talk forever. She's so funny. She's so quick on her toes. Like, oh, I would just love to like have a drink and shoot the shit with her. She
Same.
hasn't lost a beat in being a mother 22 years later. Like, and I think if anything, she's like refined her wit a little bit. And I knew going into this that she was your favorite. And we tend to not have the same favorites, at least when it comes
we
to
don't.
We are usually on opposite ends of the spectrum. But Melissa's awesome, and I am enjoying watching her in the original season, but even more so in the Homecoming one, because she's so intelligent. She's so funny. Like, you can tell that she's passionate just about like being herself unrelentlessly. And I really appreciate that she hasn't changed. If anything, she's like taken what she was and just honed it to make what seems to be a very positive, better version of herself. So I was super excited to see that like she hasn't done a 180 since her time on the original season.
Which I totally agree with you. And it's just so great to see because, again, it was 22 years ago. People change, and she's only changed for the better. And I feel like she's had a ton of growth, but also is still that same person that we knew from the original series. So it's just so great to just see her back on the screen. She's really moved out of the spotlight, which most of these people on this cast have. Specifically, this cast has remained out of the spotlight, especially when it comes to MTV. Like a lot of old Real World Johnny Bananas, we cannot get rid of him. We cannot get rid of this man. He will not leave us. CT was around on the Real World right around this time. I think like a little bit after. I don't remember what year Paris was,
40
but
or 41.
Yeah,
like,
and this guy is still on almost every season of the challenge.
Yeah,
right.
And
so
this them.
Yes, still winning them. No, I'm a big CT fan. But it's interesting that this specific cast has really moved out of the spotlight. Julie, I think, did a few challenges. We know that she tried to murder Veronica. I think she was on one of the Infernos as like a good guy, which I don't understand how that could ever be possible. She was on Battle of the Sexes with Melissa, which we get into a little bit. But other than that, Jamie was on Battle of the Sexes, and so was David. But that's really it. I don't think they did much more after that, aside from Julie doing a few early seasons. But it's kind of refreshing. It's nice because like we really are getting to re-meet them for the first time. So Danny comes in. She's kind of in that same, I don't know if it's like a bus station or what, but they really do replicate the exact scene of them meeting for the first time in the original season. And this is where my emotions like kicked in on high. I could get like, I'm getting chills just thinking about it. Like Danny comes in and he hugs her from behind and I'm just like, oh my God, this is like the same thing that was happening in the year 2000. And it was just like, so great to see. I don't know. I love them. I just love them so much, especially these two. Like these two are such amazing characters on the show. So I just love, and they picked up right where they left off.
I loved how he was like, did you bring the same bag of rice that you did?
Yes, me too. Me too.
And it was like a bunch of toilet paper instead. So.
Yes, which is so bizarre. Like, do you think they're not going to give you the rice? I can understand, but do you think they're not going to give you toilet paper?
It's also 2022 and they all had their cell phones. They probably could have like go puffed whatever toilet paper.
Yes.
Like they're in New Orleans. They're not up in Danny's cabin in the woods of Vermont. And she probably could have gotten that exact type without having to travel with it. But live your life, Melissa.
Yes.
Like we all
I support Melissa in anything that she'll do. So
exactly.
So we had Danny talk a little bit too about his time on the show. He had mentioned that it had a mind-blowing impact globally, being a gay man on TV back in the year 2000. So he's still getting messages from people on social media talking about how he has changed their lives. So, I mean, what do you have anything? Do you think anything about that? I mean, I'm surprised that it's still to this day he's getting messages. But I think we do take it for granted how normalized different sexualities have become. Not even, I mean, not to say that they're fully normalized and being accepted. We see laws being enacted all over the country, the United States, that are taking rights away from people. But it was just so rare to see an out gay man on television back in these years that it almost feels like it's jarring.
Even more so, like, and we'll get into this when we recap the original season, his relationship with Paul, a man in the army, which like don't ask, don't tell type of shit, for that to be a main storyline for him. I appreciate Danny in terms of how he was on his season and what we're seeing of him now. I do think, and I think this goes for a lot of people in minority groups, whatever the minority group is, like you feel like you have to represent your group and be a positive representation. And so I guess in a way, like it's cool that he's still getting messages because in my opinion, to think of, or like when I'm watching this season that aired in 2000 and just how he's being like so open about it. And I think at that time there was so many stereotypes of like gay men are flamboyant and they're doing this thing and that thing, and like he's just your average dude that just likes men, like that. I think it kind of gave a path for people who are like him to see, okay, like this, I'm seeing someone like me for the first time, and that's just a great thing to see. So I think it's cool that he's still getting messages about it. It seems like, I don't want to say that he wishes he wasn't getting messages as much as it is like you can tell he didn't want the limelight after the season. He more than anyone seemed like he wanted to just get the fuck out. So I think there's like good and bad of it, and I do think it'd be interesting if they were to be able to like touch back in with them after the season airs of, okay, so where's your fame at now? Like he's obviously not an A-list celebrity. He's not going to be on red carpets and stuff, but like, are more people trying to reach out? Is he like happy they did it? It died down? Like, I think more than anyone, that's what I'm going to be interested in seeing, like the effect of this airing for.
Yes. Yeah, I totally agree. And it feels like we're going to get further into his story and his kind of like path that he took after the show and how things have netted out for him. It seems like he was very, I don't want to say lonely because I don't want to speak for him, but it seems like he made a decision. He did say later on in the episode that he kind of became a recluse after the show for a little while. Even though he was living in a lot of different cities, he really separated himself from the public eye and people around him, probably to protect his mental health. Maybe he was going through some mental health struggles at the time, which it's understandable. I don't know how you could be on reality TV and not go through those mental health struggles.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm interested to see more of what he has to say about his time post show. And it seems like we'll get that.
Definitely, I agree.
Yeah. So then we cut to Julie waiting for the trolley. She is wearing a ridiculous ass outfit of crazy looking leggings and like a sports bra and a tank top and white flip flops. And I'm like, Julie, you're already sucking the energy out of me right now just by looking at you. But that's maybe just because I loathe Julie. And if anything, spoiler alert, loathe her more after this episode, which I didn't think was possible, but she really made it possible. So she pretty much says that she's planning on living the Mormon dream. I think we could probably talk about that more on the recap because I don't of the original series because that's not really the vibe that I got from her or what she portrayed on the show. Like I think in the original show she was trying to rebel against the church and she went into a lot of things about her dad and her family and how she kind of felt forced into this situation. So I think it's interesting 22 years later that she has this revisionist history of saying like it was her dream to go to BYU and get married and go to missionary and raise Mormon kids and live the Mormon dream. That's not the Julie we saw in the year 2000.
Right.
So it's interesting. She also made a comment about how she didn't feel like she's an important part of the roommates' lives because they haven't reached out to her over the last 22 years. So why would they care about her now? And this is just the start of Julie playing the victim and making this whole situation about herself. And we'll get into it once we get to some of the things that happen later in the episode. But this is just like the start. And she does admit here that she does owe some apologies. And she's nervous about them not being well received. But it doesn't feel like she really knows what she is apologizing for.
Yeah, we get into that too. What she should initially be apologizing for is those fucking leggings. Like, what?
Yeah. No, it's not okay. It's not okay. Julie, the outfit's not okay. Everybody else shows up looking like an adult, and she shows up looking like a literal clown. She looks like a literal clown.
Don't get me wrong. Like, first of all, I'm anti-pattern leggings.
Same.
I don't
just throw a pair of black leggings on. Then I would be any color, any plain color leggings would be better than what she's wearing right now. Like, did she fall prey to LuLaRoe?
I wasn't expecting that reference.
I would like to know. Does anybody know if Julie's part of a multi-level marketing scheme?
I mean, likely. Absolutely.
Very likely. She's right in that demographic. I would not be surprised. Right age range, right? Everything. Yeah. Right everything.
I don't know. She like looked nicer in her confessionals than she did in showing up that way. And I just am a little confused because like you're going to be on TV for the first time in like 2 decades, seeing people that you haven't seen in 2 decades, and
this is your choice.
You want to come in like you just finished teaching a yoga class. I don't know. Like to me, it just is a weird.
Yeah, it's a choice. It's a choice.
Yeah, you could tell from the get-go that like her intro package just had a different energy entirely than everyone else's. Like, everyone else was like, I'm open to like seeing everybody. I'm excited. I'm nervous, but like it should be good. Versus Julie came in just like, I don't think these people are gonna want to see me. I'm already like not gonna enjoy this. Like she very much had an attitude about it that it's like you're not setting yourself up for success here, Julie. That is for sure.
No, and I think she knew, I mean, deep down inside, you have to know that you have fucked up, right? Like, these people want nothing to do with you. And Melissa very publicly, I mean, they showed in the episode, very publicly had an issue with her in the challenge. Seems like that was never resolved. So she has to know that she has really damaged a lot of these relationships. So for her to come in and just be like, these people haven't been wanting to deal with me for the last, so why do they care now? It's like, Julie, let's take some... Well, we'll talk about Julie taking accountability, but like, let's take some accountability for the reason why. Yes, none of them have kept in touch with each other, but like, they're all very excited to see each other, and you're the only one that has these like trepidations. I guess Tokyo does a little bit, but we can talk about that when we get to him. Kelly pulls up on like a pedicab.
Yeah.
which I thought was strange. She didn't really give me that much. She didn't really give me that much in the original season either. I like her, but she's just kind of there. I feel like maybe she said like 6 things this entire episode. I don't know.
Yeah, she definitely didn't have a lot to say. It seems like she's sitting back. I do think that she, at some point, will make a point to break from like the sorority girl thing that they tried to stereotype her with in her original season. But I imagine that if we get like storyline out of her, it might be checking back in her relationship with Jamie. And then I think she's going to kind of serve as like a voice of reason, but like a different voice of reason than Danny is, because like Danny's kind of involved in it, and it still has been a fantastic voice of reason throughout this episode. But I think that like she strikes me as kind of like the one-on-one person that might try to calm some things down, or she'll just totally sit on the side and be like, fuck this is why I didn't talk to you people for 20 years.
Yeah, I can see it going either way. And she does kind of admit that she originally was very guarded and not present in her season, which we saw. She was in a relationship at the time with someone named Peter, who she ended up staying in New Orleans for after the show. But I guess we'll probably find out. I mean, obviously they're not together anymore, so that didn't work out. But I would love to hear more about like how long she was in New Orleans after that. So I would love to revisit that with her. But that's kind of what we got from her, just that she realizes that she was guarded, not present, and she wants to be true to herself and be a little more vulnerable this time. So I hope we see that from her.
Same.
But she will be rooming with Melissa and Danny, which I love. Like, this is the best room. I would want to also be in this room. Then we get to Tokyo. So Tokyo is formerly known as David, changed his name, and he mentions that he has no relationship with anybody in the house, which is not really surprising. His relationships were very fraught in the original series. I believe he did appear in one season of the challenge with Jamie and Melissa, but other than that, he does say that he doesn't even mention that, but he does say that he hasn't kept in touch with anybody since the show ended, which I think they're using this term a little bit loosely because obviously they were seen like doing press with each other all over the place after. Like, we got a lot of montages of them on red carpets and in interviews. So I would say like maybe a year or two after, that's when they lost touch. One thing I noticed, he is not wearing lenses in his glasses.
Oh,
what's that about?
I hate when people do that shit. As someone who needs my glasses to see, I think you are so fucking elitist if you wear fake glasses, because I lose a sense without these things. And you're just like, oh, I'm going to wear this for fashion. Fuck you.
I wear contact lenses regularly and I have glasses. I cannot see anything without them. Like nothing. I am non-functioning if I do not have contact lenses or glasses in. But it's also like you could get glasses with lenses in them that are non-prescription. Like, there are blue blocker glasses now. Those are very popular. Let's just get some plastic in there. Like, we can like poke you through your lenses, through your frames, because there's no lenses there. Like, what are we doing, Tokyo? What are we doing?
It's like when you used to go to like the 3D movies when they like first came back.
And and you would like
lenses out, and then you would wear those.
Yes.
I mean anyone who didn't actually have to wear glasses. And also 3D movies were very anti people who have to wear glasses, because I used to wear 2 pairs of glasses at once. Like,
yeah, it makes no sense.
Also,
do 3D movies exist anymore?
I'm sure they do. I think they made a resurgence, but I don't know if they are still around. I don't know. I don't really go to the movies, so
neither do I.
I'm the worst person to ask about this. I know that they were around at least like 4 to 5 years ago.
Yeah, it feels like they had another like big moment, and now I haven't heard about them in a while. But so anyway, so Tokyo says that he feels like he needs to start from scratch, getting to know everybody. He didn't really have a sense of who he was back then. And he's coming in as like a new person. And you could tell, like, his energy is so different. He looks so different. Like, he's not super muscular anymore. It feels like, and Kelly says this, like, I can see this is your soul. And I really feel like we are seeing his soul. Like, this is like who we were meant to see in 2022 or 2020, whatever year, 2000. And 2000. And it feels like he finally is comfortable enough in his own skin to show us that, instead of what he was giving us way back in the early 2000s. So I'm just so happy that we get to see this from him, because he just seems like such a warm, caring person, which before we got a very guarded, standoffish person who just wasn't really interested in getting to know anyone. He really wanted to do his own thing. And And it's just so nice that everybody can recognize that the second they see him. Like his energy is just completely different.
I loved how in the montage at the beginning, like every single clip of him was him doing something musical, because really that's the only time he looked happy when he was on the original season, is when he was doing something with music.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm really happy that he is this person now and that we get to see it. Because I think even especially like rewatching the old series, I don't know if it's that he got a bad edit or it just, you can tell that he wasn't a bad guy and that he didn't mean to be kind of like a jerk to everybody. It just feels like he didn't feel comfortable. He didn't feel accepted. And I'm just glad that we get him now feeling that way. But he got a huge hug from Kelly. And kind of like you said, he said that wiped all of his anxiety away. David had a huge welcome for him. Melissa gave him a huge, huge hug. And Melissa and David had a very complicated relationship back in the day as the two people of color in the house. Melissa felt like she really wanted to be in lockstep with David, but that just isn't what happened. And that's something that we still see on reality TV shows today, and hasn't really gotten better. I mean, yes, it has started to with different types of casting and people have different people they can relate to on shows, but it was just very apparent back in the early days of the Real World. There would be one gay person, usually a guy, one black girl and one black guy. And that was it. You never saw really other diversity outside of that. It was really just very tokenized in that way. And I'm sure, you know, obviously I'm a white female. I don't know what that feels like. But I can only imagine feeling like you're on an island and trying to relate to the one other person that is similar to you. And you just can't break through that wall. That's what it felt like was happening back in the year 2000.
Yeah, I think take everything you just said, and then during the original series, Matt brought up a great point. He's an only child, and when his dad left, like it was literally just him and his mom. So there was never really like in-house conflict resolution with people near his age or whatever. So then move him into a house with 6 other people around the same age, different backgrounds, different everything, in addition to being distinctly different from everybody else based off your race. Like I can only imagine what he was trying to go through to like figure that out for the first time on camera in front of millions of people.
A huge stage. Like I don't think I can overestimate how huge the stage was at that time because we didn't have other reality TV shows to watch. We didn't have social media to distract ourselves. Like this was a huge show back then. And it got a lot of press. So I do feel bad. I feel bad that a lot of these formative years for some of them were in front of a camera, especially when they obviously in some cases weren't necessarily comfortable or we're still sorting through a lot of things. But I'm just so happy to see that Tokyo is feeling a lot more comfortable in his skin and doing something that seems to make him really happy.
I loved how he brought out the full-size TV guide with like their cast photo
Me too.
The front, and it just showed like how big of an impact this show had on just like culture in general at the time. Like this show pulled numbers. Like we see the weekly post of how many viewers like Survivor has, and in comparison to like 2000s Real World, they blew that shit out of the water weekly for like a 23-minute show. The actual footage is anywhere between like 20 and 23 minutes for any given episode. Thank God we do not have to watch full-length MTV commercials while rewatching this though.
Yes.
That used to be my least favorite thing about watching MTV. Their commercials were significantly longer than any other channel's commercials.
MTV's commercials are on truly another level. Like they should be outlawed. The amount of commercial breaks they have on these shows.
They're their own TV shows.
Literally, there are more commercials, I feel like, than content. We still see it today on The Challenge and other shows on MTV. I mean, the only other show on MTV right now is Ridiculousness. They play it 24/7 and then one episode a week of The Challenge when the Challenge season is on. Doesn't really make sense to me. But anyway, then we get Matt. So Matt back in the day was like the skater guy, had really ugly orange sunglasses that he wore all the time. Really a lot of fashion choices that were made by Matt back in the 2000s. He was an advocate for abstinence back then. He and Julia were the two religious ones in the house. He wanted to save himself for marriage. Sounded like he succeeded with that. Now he has 6 kids. So he is no longer practicing abstinence, sounds like. And he hopes at in this kind of reunion homecoming season to bring some maturity and compassion that he feels like they couldn't have back then, which I actually think they did. So he says this in his kind of like his talking head in this episode as his intro. And I was kind of like, I feel like they had a ton of maturity and compassion back then, especially for their age. Like we said, they were so young. And there are some things that I know will be addressed in this homecoming season, and some things that we will probably address when we do the recap of the original season. So, you know, they're young and they're all learning, and it was a different time back then. But I think generally they were super mature and weren't. I mean, yeah, they went out and they drank and they had fun, but they're in New Orleans. Like, what are they supposed to do? I don't feel like they were at each other's throats. I think they handled things very maturely.
Yeah, there's very few blow-ups, and especially for some of the topics at hand, you think of even the way the dialogue around them happens in 2022, for being like 7 people from entirely different backgrounds, how well those conversations happened. I don't agree with Matt's statement there.
Yeah.
If anything, like it might be a little bit personally reflective of his own feelings, probably most towards Danny, because he like very openly said when asked about how he feels about homosexuality, he was like, "I'm still learning," and my guess is that he was trying to maybe generalize, but really, he's still probably trying to battle with how to deal with like his thoughts on the subject between being Catholic and his experience with someone like Danny, who seems like only a gem. So
truly, the only way to describe him is a gem.
yeah, that I think he was kind of generalizing, but really that was more on behalf of himself.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And Matt had extremely strong convictions back in the year 2000. And Danny mentions that he let a lot of things slide back then that he wouldn't let slide now. And it seems like, at least based on the preview for what's coming up on the season, we're probably going to see some of that play out this season. It seems like Matt is still not necessarily comfortable. He probably looks the other way on things, but I don't think he's fully accepting of lifestyles that are not like his own.
I agree,
especially other people's different sexualities.
Yeah, I agree.
Then we get Jamie. He kind of pops in. He basically, the background he gave us is that he wanted to make money in like the .com boom back then, and he was ambitious, and now he's married. Like, we don't get anything about Jamie. He's still loud. That's kind of what they gave us. He's like makes a lot of noise and is loud and boisterous. But it feels like I'm a little surprised that we didn't get a little more about Jamie, because he's another one that kind of like fell off the face of the earth over the last couple of years. Like, he doesn't really have maybe he has a social media presence. I haven't really seen too much of it. He hasn't been present on MTV or The Challenge or anything like that. So I thought that was interesting.
I have to check. So I was supposed to go to a Challenge Mania live podcast, I think 2 years ago, and I think he was one of the guests. And part of the reason I gave up my tickets, I sold them because our like once a year recruiting event for our high school ended up being the same day and it was moved because of our strike and stuff, whatever. I'm not going to get into all that. And it's one of those things that like if you didn't go, you were very rudely reminded that you didn't go. And she like favored the people who did. So between that and I was just like, I don't even really know who this guy is. But I feel like he was being, if it is him, because I can't imagine there's like.
Well, he's in Chicago.
Right. That's the other reason why it makes sense. But he like went like 3 for 3 in wins on the challenge, if it's the person I'm thinking of.
Yes, I know he won the first challenge. I think the first challenge that he was on was Battle of the Sexes. Spoiler alert, it's from 2003. He wins, along with, I think, Colin from Real World Hawaii, which, like, again, where's Colin these days? I have no idea. That was the other season that I loved back then. And he may have been on a few others. And I know when Mark Long originally was going out to Boone and Murray about the Challenge All-Stars, which has since been picked up, he posted a chat with Jamie where Jamie said that he would do it. But that, other than that, I haven't really heard too much from him. But I wouldn't be surprised if he was on a Challenge Mania podcast. But he was definitely like around at first and then kind of just disappeared.
Yeah, I think that was him. And that was like one of the reasons I didn't really care to give, or like that I couldn't go, because he was being like touted. Actually, Mark Long, I think, was the other guest. So they're like really doing it as like an old school one, and I'm like, but I don't know half of the old school people.
Yeah, see that I
you
would have
have
gone
showing up.
to.
But now
Those are my
like,
people.
yeah, well, that was saying it was
Yeah.
only like Mark Long and Jamie.
Yeah.
So and then like Derek and
Yeah.
I think that was it. So I that's like all I knew of him going into any of this was like, oh, I might have seen him in person if I had gone to the show.
Mhm.
That was it. And that
Yeah.
really seems to be all I still know about him because
Yeah.
even in his like the original season, he's kind of just like the goofball who
Yeah.
doesn't really provide a lot of substance.
Yes, I agree. I mean, I think he's a good addition to the cast. But even back then, like he never really gave a ton. But it's nice to have him around. I'm glad that he came back. I actually didn't realize back when they first announced this, for some reason, I had thought that he wasn't going to be part of it. I don't know, it was in my own head. So it was a pleasant surprise to see him there. I don't know why I thought that he wasn't going to be, but here he is. He's here. We'll see what he brings this season. The one thing I don't know that if I mentioned or not was that the house is different. So they're not at the Belfort, which is the mansion that they were in the year 2000. Sounds like it might be like a hotel, or Danny knows people who know people that own it or something like that. Mutual friends of his own it, which is strange. And he says it's like a fancy hotel. So I don't know if that means it is a hotel or if it's an Airbnb or what it is. But yeah, but seems like it wasn't available. So they have this new house that is very similar in kind of decor, a more mature version of this house. So that's just something notable because the house
Melissa's
was a really big part of the show.
Of the old house versus the new house was so funny.
I know, she's so good. She's just truly like a star. Melissa is a star. And I feel robbed that she hasn't been in our screens for the last 22 years, personally. So then we get Julie. Julie. So she comes in knowing that she has issues with Danny and Melissa. Danny and Melissa are very vocal about their issues with her, at least to us in their confessionals. So Danny mentions that he and Julie were hired to mentor high school seniors, and Danny sent a letter about how Julie sent a letter about how Danny has no morals, and how it was a mistake to hire him. And then she never reached out to him again after that. So that's kind of like the top line of the story that we get from Danny when he's first talking about Julie. She did the same thing to Melissa, which was addressed on the challenge Battle of the Sexes, where, you know, she was saying that Julie had written emails to this college saying not to hire her just so she would get these opportunities for herself. Love these flashbacks of the challenge, by the way. It's my favorite challenge season. So it's like I'm getting all of my favorite things all at once. So she comes in and she immediately hugs Danny and she tries to start apologizing. And Danny shuts it down. And just says, we'll talk later. But he says to us in the confessional that this feels really performative. She wants to do things on her terms only, is what it seems like. And she's really not interested in taking accountability. She wants to brush these things under the rug. So that was interesting that Danny didn't accept it and said that it did seem like a performative apology and that she really put him on the spot and apologized in front of all of these people. We also get her saying to Tokyo when he says that I've changed my name to Tokyo. She said, we'll go to Tokyo and ride the Mario Karts. What the fuck does that mean?
I don't understand. I just didn't understand all of it. Like, she
what does that
had
mean?
a worst entrance.
She is a clown. This girl is a clown. Like, she's just a clown. So Melissa barely gives her a hello, which I love because Melissa has just no time for this girl and no interest in opening that door again, which I am fully supportive of. I am the type of person that if you really wrong me, I don't have energy for you in my life. Like, I don't need to make things nice and fluffy just to have things be nice and fluffy. Like, I could sit in some uncomfortability and protect my peace. And I really appreciate that Melissa was just like, hi, and kept it moving. Like, I love that. I don't need the fake energy from anybody. And I just love that she's keeping it real.
I agree with you on that 100%. I mean, I think Julie came in and when Danny hugged her, I think she took it as like, oh, this is going to be okay.
Yep.
And made that apology, and I'm glad that Danny is or has like intentions of talking to her more about it. I also think it's like super mature that he wants to talk about it one-on-one
Yeah.
versus like let's put her on blast, although it does kind of happen naturally anyway that she ends up
Yeah.
being put on blast in front of the group, but she deserves it.
And she kind of put herself on blast, but we'll get to that when we get to it.
Yeah.
She also says that she wants to be roommates with Jamie and feels like she has some unfinished business with him. So, like, what the fuck is that? Because they're both married, and
Right.
this was 22 years ago. She makes some comment about how she never pursued Jamie or followed up with Jamie after the show because she never felt like she had a shot. And this to me feels like very sexual in nature, what she's talking about. Like, I don't feel like this is unfinished friendship business. I feel like she like thinks that she has a shot with Jamie.
Which would be wild.
Wild.
Just assume that, I guess.
And she is married. Maybe she's in an open relationship. I don't know how
Yeah.
these Mormon or formerly Mormon people work. So like whatever. But I don't know that. Why would you assume that Jamie is also in that same situation?
Yeah, I also don't know if I'm Julie's husband, if I'm like, yeah, please room with Jamie, the one person that you made out with or whatever. Like,
Right. And like you have kids. Are your kids watching the show, Julie?
right,
Are you ready to answer those questions for your kids?
right.
I'm going to go with no, you're not. Because you can't even answer questions to these people in the house. So she also goes, they're doing the tour, and she goes with Tokyo into the confessional room. And she says, if people are fucking in here, then we will be able to hear them. And Tokyo says, who's fucking in here?
Yeah.
And literally, what are you saying, Julie? Everybody in this house is married. Every single person in this house is married, except for Danny. But Danny is the only gay man in the house. Maybe if he brings people home and wants to, I don't know what his relationship status is, but like, who's fucking in the confessional, Julie? Like, we are adults here. We are all in our 40s at this point. We meaning they.
Yeah.
Like, no one's trying to do that in the 2 weeks that you're back here.
Yeah, that was
Like, where does this girl think she is?
a wild statement to me. Like, what are you implying? What do you think is going to happen? What have you been told is going to happen?
Right.
What have you been promised? I am like, what did they do to trick you to come on here that you think that this is going to go down?
My mind is truly boggled by like the energy she came into this house with.
Mm-hmm.
It's just unhinged. So then they go ahead and they go outside and they start hanging out a little bit. And we talk a little bit about Tokyo's name change. Sounds like he got fully immersed in this Japanese style of writing, and he wants to use the Japanese culture to tap into all of these different types of characters, which is interesting. And I'm really excited to hear that he's doing something creative. He did say that he used to be all about his music. He didn't really show up to be with his roommates mentally. He was just totally checked out. I am kind of sad. Like I said, I checked out his YouTube videos. And there was nothing there, unfortunately. Maybe I'm looking at the wrong site, but I think it was the right site. So I was hoping to see some, like, I don't know, it sounded like there was like a cooking show or something that he had on YouTube. I guess maybe he deleted his videos before he came on the show, but
I was thinking
I wanted to see him.
Do you think he did a big old clean sweep of everything?
Maybe. He might have. So he brought the TV guide, as you mentioned, and that led to a lot of conversation. So Melissa has a spread to herself in the middle of this TV guide, and it says that her plans after the show are to move to LA with Julie. And someone in the house says, like, oh, did it happen? And they were like, well, we both moved to LA, but we didn't move to LA with each other. And then Julie gets like immediately aggro here because Melissa says that she didn't realize that Julie moved to LA. And she essentially storms off, but Melissa has compartmentalized this entire relationship with Julie because she is wronged by Julie. And she's just setting a boundary for herself mentally. Like, why is she going to be thinking about this girl moving to LA 22 years ago when she wants nothing to do with her? Julie takes this very personally. And in her confessional, she says, this was a huge thing for me to move to LA. And then says Melissa's a fucking liar for not remembering. And I'm just like, this is another thing where Julie's just continuing to make everything about her. And she has this victim complex. Like, why does Melissa care that it's a huge thing for you to move to LA? It was probably also a huge thing for Melissa to move to LA.
Right.
Why does she need to be bothered with you?
Okay, I get that Julie was the last person into the house for a reason, but I
Yep.
almost wish she was the first so she could see how everyone else interacted when they
Yeah.
like saw each other. Because I do wonder if this interaction now at about the LA thing happens if she realizes like she's the only one coming in guns blazing. Everyone else is kind of like more in a let's see how this goes type of
Yeah.
place. I mean, given it's great for television. However, just in terms of
Yes.
like your storm off and your temper tantrum is entirely unneeded. Like how are you not able to sit down and have this conversation like an adult about
Right.
something so simple? And then like if I'm especially if I'm Danny or especially if I'm Melissa, like why would you even expect to be able to have a civil conversation about things that are far deeper, like the letters that she wrote and how it does entail some like homophobia and racism to just say it
Hmm.
bluntly. Like, how do you? I don't know. I just wouldn't feel like it's even worth my time having a conversation with this woman about these things I've been upset about for so long when she can't even handle this conversation.
Exactly. Exactly. And it just goes to show how I don't even want to say how little she's grown. I feel like she has regressed in her maturity level and her willingness to take accountability or see things from other people's perspective. Julie was not good on the show in the beginning. I'm not trying to come out here and say that she was like this great character who showed a ton of growth, but felt like she was getting out of her bubble a little bit by being on the original show and being more accepting of people who were not like her, kind of unlike Matt, who didn't really open his mind. It felt like Julie kind of was.
Mm-hmm.
So to see her come back into the show and just immediately throw up excuses and make herself a victim and make it all about her, and try and brush all this stuff under the rug, I'm just like, how? Like, do you not remember what the show is? It just like is wild to me that this is the attitude that she came in here with. And like, read the
Yeah, I
room.
agree with you.
No one else is giving off these
She
vibes.
did I cut out? Am I here?
No, you're here.
Okay, cool. Because you froze, which means like I'm sometimes able to be heard or sometimes not. Um, I don't get why StreamYard hates my internet so much,
It
but
really does.
it's so dumb. It works all day in these meetings and stuff most of the time, minus a few days lately. But anyway, point I'm trying to make here is that um, if you are a white woman who questions when you see people of color, especially that white tears and like these fragility tears to escape ownership and accountability for marginalizing different minority groups, whether it's people of color, whether it's um, people in the LGBT community, whatever it is, right? Like Julie was the definition of that in this. I would love for this to be used as this we talk about this stuff. That's literally all I could think of through the whole episode was like, oh, Julie, you are living up to like every single complaint about white women right now. You are
Yes.
the picture of it.
Yes, she is like the epitome of like a white victim complex, a Karen, everything that you want to like with this every negative. I don't even want to say a stereotype because it's not a stereotype. It is what a lot of white women are. And we're two white women. We make mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes, but there are some who can take accountability and try and learn, and some who just want to crawl in their hole and blame everybody else and play the victim because people coddle white women and people fawn over them. And Julie has been fawned over and coddled for her entire life. And it seems like she's never been put into a position where she has had to take accountability for herself. So nothing has changed with her, it seems.
It sucks because like there's so many people who would benefit and maybe change their perspective based off of having the opportunity that Julie had to go on the real world and live with people, and then even her opportunities afterwards, moving to LA and talking to different groups at colleges, students, being on the
Mhm.
challenge, like all this stuff, right? And to see that it's like she's back almost at square one of when she first got into the real world house in 2000.
Yep.
Um, I also think, like, not to get too political, but like I think it ties right into kind of like the political landscape of where we're at, where like things have been so polarizing that
Mhm.
if she did make any progress, it wasn't enough to like land on a liberal and progressive um, like viewpoint on a lot of
Yeah.
lifestyle things, or just like
Yeah.
learning. And I mean, the amount that if you're a white person, you haven't learned a ton of shit over the last like what when 2016, so 6 to 7
Mhm.
years. Like I just it's incredibly frustrating. Um, and I think that like we really see Julie as like a sign of the times in terms of like white America, Trump's America,
Yeah.
all that type of shit. Like she just epitomizes it to an extreme, and it's crazy to like see that on the television in front of you right now. Someone who had these opportunities to like be around different people and learn from different people, and it's just it's bewildering.
It is bewildering. And we see it a little bit in, if I don't think you watched the first Homecoming for New York. I
Nice.
forget everybody's name except for Heather B and Eric in the first season. For now, it's like my brain is stuck on New Orleans, but we see it happen in that season too, where they address a lot of some of the racist or microaggressions that happened in the 90s and just these white women not being able to take it in the year, I guess that was 2020 or 2021, whenever they filmed that. So it's like shit is still really happening. And I think it's something about like, I don't know if it's this age rate, and no shade. Listen, I'm an elder millennial. I think it might be like the Gen X age range that might be, they're not quite like boomer energy, but they're not like, they didn't really grow up like in the internet age the same way that some of us did. Like I was in the cusp of not growing up with the internet, but it's also like you grew up, you were a fucking adult when 9/11 happened. You saw the bigotry and everything
Yeah.
else that came out of that on a day-to-day basis. And it's like you fell on one side of that, one side or the other. Like it's either you felt for the people who are on the receiving end, or you were like pro George W. Bush going to war with people. Like it's like those are the two like polar opposites. And I feel like that has extended into kind of the age that we're in now, where it's like you're either Trump's America or you're more progressive and liberal. I just feel like those branches have kept kind of like growing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just kind of crazy to me that like you were that age back then and you like didn't start learning. She was like a prime age to continue to grow back
Mm-hmm.
then. It was the year before 9/11 happened. Like that is the prime age where you can see what's going on and say like this is not something that I'm in support of, and like this is kind of fucked up, and you can like grow from that, especially when you're thrust into this situation where you're meeting people that you've never, types of people that you've never met before. You're meeting people of color. She cried so much in the original show about like not being exposed and saying it's not fair that people that she went to school with didn't learn all of these things. And then this is how she shows up in the house 20 years later. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
where was that energy? Where is that energy that you had from back then?
Yeah, I agree with you.
So, long story short, really sucks. But so we get a montage. We get this incoming message, which is the thing that they do in Homecomings. They like do incoming messages on the TV, and they all gather around and they watch some of like these throwback clips, and then they kind of just sit around and discuss. So we get the first one. It's like a montage of the post-show press that the cast did. And it really drives home how popular the show was. So we had
Mm-hmm.
David at the time, now Tokyo, singing Come On Be My Baby Tonight on Chappelle's show. We saw Julie interviewing Anna Nicole Smith. We saw Melissa on a number of TV shows. It's like these people exploded back then. And at the end of it, they really show clips of Julie and Melissa saying, like, I want to be friends with Julie forever. I want to be friends with Melissa forever. I hope nothing comes in between our friendship. And this just
Mm-hmm.
like opens up the floodgates of being able to talk about the situation. So Julie brings up the LA thing again and is like upset and is like, I just can't believe you don't remember me. And she's really pushing it on Melissa as it being her fault. And then she says, why did you kick me off that challenge?
Mm-hmm.
And I was flabbergasted that she brought this up 20 years later. I think that was 2003. So let's just give it 20 years. This is really what you're bringing up. Why did you kick me off that challenge? That's what you're... It was clear why Melissa kicked her off that challenge back then. We saw it in the flashback. We saw the whole storyline play out.
Right.
We saw the fight between them. We saw Melissa in the winner's circle saying, I want to vote Julie off. And then we saw Julie getting voted off. We saw the whole from A to Z. We saw it. How are you asking this question?
especially because, and Melissa brings up the point that like the story wasn't portrayed correctly in terms of
Yes.
why she was like why there was hostility between the two. And so in
Yes.
addition, she has to bear this burden of like seeming like she kicked someone off who's supposed to be her friend or whatever, when really like this girl not only went after her money but went after her personally and her character. Even more unfortunate than like her going after her money. So I just
Yep.
like I can't say enough how much I appreciated the way Melissa handled the entire situation and just the
1000%.
conversation with it, and really like held Julie's feet to the fire of no, you're wrong. Like your apology is wrong. This is not how this happens. And um her and Danny together is just such like a good combo in this. And like
Yeah.
I hate that
It's
they have to deal with it, but also at the same time, I don't know if there's two other MTV reality TV stars that would want to have this conversation with anyone doing
exactly.
problematic shit than those two. Like I can I listen to their podcast? Like I want to listen to them all day.
Seriously. Oh my God, I would love it if they made a podcast. Yeah, I think specifically Melissa held a masterclass in keeping her composure and holding Julie accountable and really just like calling her every time that she said something that made herself the victim or said something that put the onus on Melissa and Danny to say like, no, what you're doing right now is you're putting it on us. We are the aggrieved party. And Danny just jumping in and saying like, I'm not going to allow this conversation. Well, we'll start. Okay. Let me jump back a little bit. So we address the letters. Julie says that she never wrote letters or emails about Melissa to anybody. Melissa tells us in the confessional that her agent forwarded her the emails. They exist. We believe Melissa 100%. There's no question that this happened. She had the same story in the year 2003 that she has now. There's no question that this is what happened. She's kind of going back and forth a little bit with Melissa. Julie's going back and forth a little bit with Melissa on this, and then Danny jumps in and says, "I'm not. Let's like, this happened to me too, so I'm not going to let this continue. You did the same thing. Way more egregious what she did to Danny. And what she did to Melissa was not okay. Was disgusting. What she did to Danny was so damaging. So essentially, the story is that she and Danny were mentoring high school students. She says her version of the story is that they were at the school with a group of valedictorians and the valedictorians didn't recognize them. So they were laughing that the valedictorians didn't recognize them. And it seemed like they were making fun of these students. So she wrote an email and or a letter and blamed it on Danny. That's her story. And that she's embarrassed that she did that. And she's been hiding in a hole ever since because she can't believe that she did that. Danny says that's not what happened. She wrote a letter about how he was of low moral character, talked a lot about him being a gay male at the time around high school students. We didn't get into like the meat of exactly what Julie said, but that was a gist, is that she was saying a lot of homophobic things, flat out homophobic things to damage Danny's character. And Danny makes a point that that it was a huge, huge deal to be out and gay and in the public eye in the year 2000. And for someone who felt like he felt like she really took time to understand him. There's a flashback about how she wrote a song for his partner, Paul, and that she was even saying like, how can someone question your love back then? And I think he said, quote, when you were gay and allowed to have a voice, it was rare and was special. And when someone tainted that, it meant a lot. So she just fully tore his character down. And then she just starts sobbing. Any thoughts so far on this exchange?
I mean, again, like I can't harp on enough. Just like crying as the person, whether or not she did it, but it was someone on her side that did it, a manager, whatever. For her to just like sit through this, like it just made me so mad that that's your choice and reaction for this. But again, Danny and Melissa, like, it sucks that they have to like carry this burden of
Yep.
representing the groups that they feel that they have to represent, and kind of like they have to address this issue to someone who really should just be like begging for forgiveness for what they've done.
Mhm.
And still they need to take the approach of like, we have to teach her a lesson. It just shouldn't be that like, I was watching this just so mad at Julie that like, how
Yes.
have you had 22 years to think about this, and this is how you're able to present yourself in this situation? Like, you came in saying you knew you owed apologies, and this is how you apologize? This is how you hold yourself accountable? Like, how in 22 years have you not been able to formulate something better than what you just did right then and
Yeah.
there?
Exactly. And it's like Tokyo says it exactly, is that she never thought she was going to have to come face to face with these people again and that she could run from this forever. And now she has to face it. And her immediate reaction is to not take any accountability whatsoever, just pretend like she didn't know about it. And then, specifically in Melissa's case, she's denying that it happened and she's like looking for proof. So
Yes.
Melissa makes a point that, she runs the risk as the only woman of color in the room, that she's being conscious because she doesn't want to seem like an angry and a bitter and a petty person. And it's just like this emotional labor that Melissa has to go through when dealing with a person like this. Like, I just feel for her. And it's just a shame that this is like day one and you have to be met with a person like this. And she points out that because the challenge didn't show the story the right way, she already feels like she was portrayed in that light.
Mm-hmm.
And she does say what makes matters worse is that Julie took opportunities away from two marginalized groups, a gay man and a woman of color. So then Julie, like clockwork, stops crying. I didn't see one tear in this girl's eye and goes, "Oh, so you're telling me I'm a homophobe and a racist?" And I was like, this girl is not right now. This is really not what she's deciding to do, is it? Where are your tears now, Julie? Where are your tears? I don't see them.
It made me
Your eyes
so
dried up
mad.
real quick, Julie.
Neither word was said
Neither.
prior to her saying them. And for her to just jump to that conclusion, I wish she would have jumped off a cliff instead. Like,
Yes, same.
It made me irate. Absolutely
Yes.
irate. That's like, I can't stand when anyone does that in an argument. Like,
Agreed.
you just escalated this 5 levels that didn't need to be escalated. We are telling you how your act against me, your act against him, whatever it is, like, it hurt us, but also you have to see how, and when you pan out and look at the bigger scale, how you as a white woman affected me as a woman of color. And I keep saying me like I'm Melissa. I just want to be her when I grow up.
Same.
Like, truly, if I could be half as witty or funny as Melissa,
Same.
I've done it right. Like, God
Totally
bless
agree. She's amazing.
so I'll keep pretending to be Melissa. Like, as a woman of color, or Danny as a gay man, that like the scope of what you've done is so much bigger than Julie has ever allowed herself to see it. And she's got to face the music. Like, this isn't okay. And I do think that, because she went up to her room soon after.
Yeah.
When Tokyo went to talk to her, I do think that Tokyo got her to at least see outside of the perspective she was seeing. I won't say understand, but I think she at least was like, she was trying to see outside of her own perspective. So, not to give her some credit, maybe more credit to Tokyo, because like he easily could have taken the side of like, well, I'm a man of color, and if like you're not respecting Black women, you're not respecting Black men, So like he could have easily just, but he's trying with Julie. He's trying.
Yeah.
It made me so mad when she jumped to using racism and homophobia. Like, oh no.
Yeah, it feels like to me that she tried to like, it feels like she tried to like weaponize that and throw it back as a defense. And Melissa just stood her ground and was like, I didn't say those words. And Julie just keeps saying like, I'm sorry if, and then she keeps saying, can we ever be friends again? Can we ever repair this? And she's just pushing them to like repair this relationship when they haven't had time to heal. And Danny is like, we need to talk about trust. Like, we're not even in a place where we can start thinking about that right now. But she keeps going back to this point with Melissa where she's saying, I don't have these letters. And she just keeps saying, like, I don't have proof. And then she'll say, like, I'm sorry if this happened. And she just continues to discount Melissa's experience. So Melissa gets up and she's like, I want to eat my chicken salad. She walks away. Julie, again, starts to cry, runs upstairs to her room like a little baby. And Tokyo is like, don't you have to eat? Come on. She's like, no. And she goes upstairs. She calls her mom. And again, continues to blame it on Danny and Melissa. And she just says she got attacked in front of the group. She like, what the fuck, dude? Like, you're really saying that these people attacked you? That's really what you're taking from this? And that just goes to show, like, you're not listening to anything they have to say. There was no attacking whatsoever. There was very civil, calm conversation. She is the one that escalated the conversation. Danny and Melissa never did. And then she runs upstairs and she continues to make herself the victim. This whole episode is just Julie as the victim. And I have a bad feeling that this whole season is going to be Julie as the victim. But they go eat and they're not talking about Julie at all, at least from what we see. And then Tokyo goes upstairs and, talks to her. And she's like, were they talking about me? And it's like, girl, not everything is about you. Mm-hmm. Literally not everything is about you. She's just delusional.
I wish that, like, no, I don't wish. That's not the right word. It's just crazy because, like, there was never name calling on their end. There was no yelling on their end. Like, it was stern.
Nothing.
It was like they held their ground. They were stern in what they were saying. They meant what they were saying. And just like how dramatic it became in the phone call to her mom, like you said, like, oh, they attacked me and this and that. And I do think that Tokyo's working hard to try and make this work. And I do think that's interesting because that wasn't his role in the first, like, their original. So, like, I think you can tell that he's grown, and it also like shows a side of him that, like, yes, he's saying this is him, but his actions are matching it, where Julie isn't really saying that she's, like, grown or whatever, but it just like she's showing who she is very quickly. And I like to see that how Tokyo is presenting himself differently. It's not just him presenting himself that way. It is, like, followed through by his actions.
Yeah, I had in my notes that Tokyo has grown so much as a person, and it just makes me feel like warm and fuzzy inside watching him, like, handle this situation with Julie, even though Julie sucks and nothing makes me feel warm and fuzzy. That includes Julie. But just like the way he's handling this, like, again, just has such a measured conversation with her and, like, does the emotional labor of trying to teach her and explain to her, which is not his responsibility. She continues to make excuses, but you're right. It does feel like he's somewhat able to hit home a little bit with her. He does say, like, she's throwing blame on other people and acting like this didn't happen because she's feigning ignorance. But because these people are in her camp, it is essentially her. It's as if they're acting on her behalf and she's benefiting from it. So it's essentially her who did these actions. Like, these agents and whoever probably aren't in anybody's life anymore. I mean, they're probably in some people's life unless they're not on this earth anymore. But, like, in this universe that we're watching, like, who are they? They probably don't exist anymore to these people. And, like, you're really throwing blame on these random people that don't matter instead of taking accountability for yourself. And I will say, this is very Jen Shah. Very Real Housewives. It's my social media manager. Yes, it feels like we're dealing with another Jen Shah. Very much like, I didn't write those tweets. And it's very Meredith saying, but it doesn't matter. It came from you. These people are representing you. And I just don't understand how people don't understand that.
Right.
It doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't. It truly doesn't. And this is, like, even before all of that. Like, we're talking about, like, angry emails, right? And letters, like,
really?
Legit letters. Like,
yes, legit written letters, maybe typed, but probably written. It's just wild. But Tokyo makes a really great point to Julie, and it feels like she kind of is receptive to it. But he says, people of color don't get opportunities like this all the time. And it's harder to get these opportunities back as a person of color once they're taken from you. So Julie is now robbing Melissa of her voice by saying, like, this didn't happen. This didn't happen. So she just keeps saying, like, I see, but I don't know that she's really listening. And she just, like, is almost repeating what he's saying and is like, I don't know how I could ever explain to them that I don't understand what they're going through. And it's like, you're literally just regurgitating what Tokyo's saying to you and then just like saying it again out loud to make it seem like you're hitting home. But she says something like, I've never thought about this before, and the buck stops with me. And my question is, how have you never had this thought one time in 2 decades? Like,
Right.
what is your bubble? How do I get into this bubble? Like, is this literally the first time in 22 years that you have been made to feel uncomfortable and had to sit in it and marinate in this uncomfortability?
You don't want to be in that bubble.
I don't want to be in that
know you
bubble.
don't
It's
wanna be
true.
in
I
that
do not want to be in that bubble. No, I would rather jump myself off a cliff than have Julie jump off a cliff if I had to be in that bubble. But I just cannot imagine being this out of touch with reality. Like, I cannot imagine it.
There was the part where she's like, I wish I could take exactly everything you just said and say it to them.
And it's like, bro, you literally just listen to this man say it, so just fucking say it. Like, I don't understand what you can't say.
Even
He's handing it to
Melissa-
you on a platter.
Yeah,
just say
even
it.
Melissa told her how to apologize. She like all she had to
Melissa
do was say
literally
that.
said, I'm sorry that I did that to you, or I'm sorry that that happened. She couldn't even say that. She walked upstairs. Like, she's giving her a script and she can't even say that. It's just so wild to me.
Yeah, I think that it does not bode well for Julie that she's been in this house for like 36 minutes and she
Yeah.
has already had all of this. I don't think that it gets resolved quickly. I don't think
No.
that she really excels in the conflict resolution area. So that I only imagine that these next couple of weeks are going to be incredibly uncomfortable and tumultuous for her. And
Completely
I don't
agree.
mean that in a way where I feel bad for her.
No.
I don't know if Julie will learn anything from this experience. I just think that and we saw in the preview, there's more like Julie explosions to come.
Yes. Yes. And we could talk about the preview. I think, the episode ends here, essentially. She walks out of her room to go talk to Melissa and try and do some kind of form of regurgitation of what Tokyo has said to her. But she like walks forward and then walks back and then walks forward, like tiptoes in and then tiptoes out. And it's just like, grow the fuck up, Julie. Literally grow up. You're an adult woman. You have children. Grow up. You need to grow up. That's it. You're not a baby. No one needs to handle you with kid gloves. Maybe they did when you were 20, but you're in your 40s now. And that's not the game that we're playing here.
Mm-hmm. Melissa's going to run circles around her regardless of what Julie says. So I'm excited for that conversation because it puts Melissa back on my screen as well. So
yes. I'm like a little bit sad that we don't get to binge all of these episodes, but I do like that we have something to look forward to every week. But I just want more. I want more. So in the preview, we get a pretty spicy preview. We get some making out in the hot tub. We get some drinking, a lot of drinking. Seems like a lot of Julie drinking. We address Paul and Danny, and we get to see Paul's face.
Mm-hmm.
And then we get a knock on the door, and they allude to it being Paul, but I don't think it's Paul. I think that's like a probably delivery person or something like that. I think they're trying to fake us out with that one.
Yeah, why would you show up if you're Paul? Like, what do you get out of that?
Yeah, and it seems like Danny... Money. Yeah, maybe money. It seems like Danny says that their relationship didn't end well, which is very sad. That's very sad. Yeah. Julie is belligerently drunk in this preview. She's falling on her face. This is the preview for the whole season. She's falling on her face. She's puking. Then she says something about how she's bruised on her arm. And she says, did he do that to me? And it seems like she's alluding to Tokyo doing something to her. And Melissa says, like, I'm not going to take this talk about a black man, like, harming you, essentially.
Yeah.
So I'm a little like, ugh, are we really going here, Julie? Like, is this really what we're going to have to be seeing play out on our screens this season? I just hope not. I hope that we're not alluding to, I hope that what they're alluding to is not the case, but I don't expect any better of her. Matt still feels pretty homophobic. They start talking to him in the confessional, and he's kind of like, we're done with this conversation. Not a great look from Matt.
No, I'm hoping that it was just spliced to make it look that way, and we're actually going to get something maybe a bit more eye-opening. Matt really strikes me as, I encountered these types of people when I taught in like the northeast corner of Connecticut. So very rural, very white. Were there people of color there? Yes, but like very, 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 very few. And it really wasn't, it didn't really happen so much towards like sexuality. It was more about race, but it was like, oh, well, the people I know that are people of color, they're fine. But all those other generalizations and stereotypes, when I see someone I don't know, they're all of them. And
Yes.
Matt strikes me as that type of person where I think he'll like always have this like appreciation and respect for Danny. And like, you're okay with me, but like the people like you that I don't know, no, absolutely not. And I have a feeling we're going to see that sort of perspective out of Matt.
I think so too. And listen, no shade if you're listening from Arizona, but if you are, you probably know the people that surround you. Not the most progressive area. Not great. So it doesn't really bode well just in general. I don't know. It just feels like he didn't do as much growing as I think we hoped that he did, or wants to make it seem like he did. I think he also tried to seem like much more progressive back then than he was. So we'll see how that plays out, but not a good look for Matt.
I mean, we also kind of gets away of being similar to Julie, where like he has this opportunity to open up and grow, and then like does not continue with that growth. And again, like a state like Arizona, I don't know how long he's lived in Arizona for, but like a state like Arizona, if you think of all the political stuff over the last how many years, in terms of like what's gone down there, I'm sure just like the things you hear and see on a regular basis versus if you're in like more liberal state per se, that does not help the growth. And I bet you he is also a product of this time where it was like very easy to fall into one of two categories like Julie has. So yeah, I think that he kind of just like gets away with it a little bit more because he's not as like he hasn't caused as many problems as Julie has, essentially.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I actually think that Julie in the original series showed more growth than Matt because it seemed like she wanted to explore these other ideas and these other ways of life because she had, oh my God, my Apple Watch is talking, that she wanted to explore all these different avenues and these different types of people and these different cultures because she felt so sheltered. A lot of it felt like a way to rebel against her family, but it did seem like she at least like wanted to learn. Obviously, I don't know what happened to that because she's been a piece of shit since she stepped on the screen. Excuse me, but she's been a piece of shit since she stepped on the screen in this episode. So obviously she didn't keep that up. But like Matt never really showed that growth or that like hunger to learn more in the original show. He just kind of like existed. And because he wasn't as annoying as Julie and was just like seemed more put together or like less doe-eyed and kind of like annoying, it didn't get as much attention back then. But he was just as bad. I mean, he was just as bad as her.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So that's Matt. We get Julie talking about how she left the Mormon church. Big deal. And we also see this scene of her like slamming a salad on a table when she's talking to Tokyo. And then we see Melissa saying like, this is an uncomfortable conversation. We're talking about race. So it seems like there's another race conversation that comes up. And then Julie says, fuck these women, because it shows like Kelly kind of saying like, you and I came here for different reasons. And what I'm going to say is fuck Julie, not fuck these women. Fuck Julie.
Yes.
Okay. Fuck Julie. Yeah. I think we can confidently say fuck Julie.
Yeah, I was about to say, we don't even 100% know what it's about, but I'm confident.
Yes. Confidently can say fuck Julie.
Yeah, I'm excited to see the preview, just to see like how things develop. And I overall just like I said earlier, watching this makes me happy. I think part of it is from like watching the original series while this is airing, and just like seeing how happy that most of them were to see each other, and just how especially like Melissa is just like better than she was back then. Like, dude, she has some words that I'm like, her vocabulary is too big for me. I need Melissa to talk down to me. I need smarter words because I'm like, what the fuck does that mean? I'm like Googling words from closed caption. But like she has missed a beat. She is so funny. Like I'm excited to see like what Jamie adds into this whole dynamic, because I think that he will at some point. Like, he was pretty quiet this episode, but
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that, like, I think it was smart for him to be quiet this episode, I guess.
I think so
And
too.
because I think if he contributes, most likely it doesn't end up well.
No, yeah, I totally agree. And I think they will get into some of the N-word stuff that happened in the beginning of the season. And I think that'll be really where we see Jamie a little bit on the hot seat because he did not handle that situation well from the original series. So we'll get into that when it actually airs. I
Wait,
know
that
that
happened in the beginning of the season?
that happened in the original season.
Original of the first, like in the beginning of the original?
It was like midway,
All right, I
about
won't
closer
lie.
to the
There's
end.
one episode I fell through that if it was during that one,
They
I
went to
might
like a
go back.
swamp tour, and
Okay.
the leader of the swamp tour said something very offensive and racist.
Okay.
And it's gonna come up. I've heard that it comes up based on some of the press and like the interviews that we've read. So I'm sure they will revisit the whole scene. So I'm sure you
Okay.
will see it. But Jamie could have done a lot more back then and actually didn't just do anything at all. So I'm sure he'll get his time in the hot seat as well, and
Yeah.
we'll hear from him.
Yeah, I really could just use like Melissa and Danny narrating everything, and then like just seeing what other people have to say, but just put
Mhm.
Melissa and Danny in the confessional at all times.
Yeah, I want to lobby for them to get a podcast with each other.
Mm-hmm.
I love these two. I love them together. I know Danny was like very close with Kelly back in the day, but I hope that he leaves this with like a lifelong bond. I mean, they all kind of have a lifelong bond, but like I hope
Mm-hmm.
they keep it up, him and Melissa. I just love them together.
Yeah, they're good.
Yeah. Well, any other thoughts about the episode, the real world in general? I personally was very surprised at like the rush of emotions that I got when I saw all these clips from the old real world, and then we've been watching it, and I was happy to watch it, but I didn't feel like as emotional. But then when I watched this, I like truly felt like I got like emotional. Like it took me back. So I was kind of surprised by that.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting to have it like make me feel as happy as it did.
Mm-hmm.
And not that, like, I don't know, TV doesn't tend to like impact me that much, especially reality TV, because it's more for like my enjoyment, and it's not as
Mm-hmm.
much like I'm watching this to have a perspective, like a different perspective to analyze my world or whatever it might be. That it just like made me feel good, and I just hope that the rest of the season has a decent enough balance of like telling Jamie and Matt to go fuck themselves while also having some feel good moments. Like, I need the
Yes.
balance of that.
I think we'll get it. I think we'll get it. This cast is so good that I think it would be impossible for us to go a whole season without getting a lot of feel good moments too, and
Mm-hmm.
moments for us to be excited about, because they really are just such a well balanced. Everybody needs a villain, right? Because then if there were no villains, there would be no heroes. So like, I mean, these villains are pretty villainous, but like, we need them, and they're providing us entertainment, and it gives us something to say like "fuck you" too. So
Are you reading my tweets right now about Tori? Is that where this is coming from?
no, but I agree with you on that.
Yeah, someone replied to me and I like don't understand it. Maybe I'll ask you after, because I'm like,
Okay.
what's tweeting me? But yeah, I agree with you that if you have all good guys on a show, where does your conflict come from?
Yeah.
Where do you? There's a lot of things that develop because of it, and I don't know if they're. I mean, I guess Julie is a villain, and Matt is like trying to be a hero, but he's
Yeah.
actually a villain. He's in
Mhm.
disguise. And I mean, there's going to be other people who feel the opposite way that we do, which is, I guess, like what really brings it back to the beginning of this is that
Mhm.
you have so many different people and so many different perspectives, and to bring them all into one living situation, given like they have their phones and stuff for this, but just to see them coexist, and especially um, coexist after having such an intense experience together, it's cool to see that happen in front of you.
Yeah, I totally agree. And if you're those people who are on the opposite side, just like don't at me, okay? Because I'm not going to be open to hearing what you have to say. I understand you have to exist, but like I don't want to hear it. So just don't. Okay.
I just like don't want to make you cry because I love roasting strangers. So
Yeah. Yeah,
it's one of my
exactly.
favorite things to do in this life.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
at me, that's actually fine. You
Okay,
know
at Kari. If you at me, I'm just going to laugh at you essentially. And I probably will publicly read your tweets and or your messages here and just roast you on the podcast. So if you want that, feel free.
Speaking of tweets, Katie.
What a great segue. Yeah, you can follow me, speaking of, on Twitter at RealSomeKatie. You can also find me on Twitch at twitch.tv/RealSomeKatie and with an underscore at the end. Don't forget the underscore. And then you can also find me on Silent Podcast where we're covering Big Brother Canada season 10. The season is off the rails this week. I mean, it's been off the rails this whole time, but this week has really been off the rails. We're deciding who's going up on the block with gummy bears and who picks a certain color gummy bear. It's just like outrageous. And we're covering Real Housewives with Kari on the Cool Water Show. So we're finally finishing up the OC this week. We can celebrate, or I guess next week after reunions. So we can celebrate that. We got a ton of Housewives content coming down the line the next couple of months. So we will be in your podcast apps talking about it. So follow us.
Sure will be. I am on the internet as well. I am at KGD26. And you know what? Forget plugging my Instagram. I'm trying to get into the TikTok game. If you don't like my dog learning how to speak on TikTok, you're a fake friend. That's it. That's what it comes down to.
All right, I'm gonna have to follow you on TikTok.
That. And I did it. You remember how I was like, should I do a TikTok about the story?
Yeah.
I did it.
You did it. Okay. All right, I'm gonna follow you.
I got a few views. I didn't blow up or anything, which is fine because I directly targeted Diamond in my story. If you don't know what story I'm talking about, follow up on TikTok. It's KGD26. I have like former students in my comments being like, yeah, Dahlia, slay. Like, you should have swung on her. It's so funny.
Amazing.
So yeah, I'm on Twitter tweeting. I'm just like subtweeting anyone who takes their whole hour of Survivor to destroy Tori's life. We get it. She's anti-vax, but she had to get the fucking vaccination to be on the show. So like, shut the fuck up.
I don't think she did. I don't think she did.
So?
No, I think they filmed it before vaccines were broadly available.
All right.
So I don't think she did get vaccinated to be on the show.
Okay, maybe she's not vaccinated, but either way.
She's definitely not vaccinated.
Just the complaints. Like I love seeing her do fun or like good things for her because my Twitter timeline is just like all caps lock anti-Tory. And if some of you brought that same energy to things that fucking mattered, we would be in a better place. But go off. Keep wasting your fucking time on Tory. I mean, I'm not a Tory fan by any means. Like, please do not think anything here. Like, with my background on my phone is Tory. That's not it. It's my dog at home. My parents' golden retriever. His name is Riggins. But I just like, don't you guys not have things to say about her? Like, it's not like she's doing anything new. She's doing the same slimy shit she's done all season. And she is anti-vax, and so is her dad. And you know what? There's probably a few, like, do you think Jonathan is vaccinated? I don't know.
Hell no. He's a white dude with dreadlocks. That's like part of the white dude with dreadlocks starter pack is that they're anti-vax.
Like, I don't know. I'm sure there's even other people that are some of your faves who are anti-vax, but are just not as public about it. So whatever. In conclusion, you can catch me on Twitter making fun of people who make fun of Tori and on TikTok. I'm going to try and post more on there because, I don't know, sometimes I'm funny. So, yeah, I put one up of Nitro today learning how to speak. There was better like instances of it, but it's cute and it's short. So that's the best part. You don't have to sit there forever. Yeah, and I'm podcasting with Katie about Real Housewives. I can't wait to talk about the news that dropped today. And so that'll be this weekend. A little teaser there for you. And coming up soon, so they just dropped the challenge all trailer, so I believe I'm going to be doing that. And the Circle comes back May 4th, so there's that. So in conclusion, if you like hearing what I have to say, there's going to be the opportunity to hear a lot more of it. And if you don't, then sorry, like I'm not going anywhere. This is only increasing, baby. So buckle up. Anyway, that's the end of it. Katie, take us out.
Yeah.
Oh,
Well,
wait. We have to do the brand thing. Sorry, not to interrupt
yes.
you. Here,
No, I was going to say you can find us
do it.
at Silent Podcasts. We are on Twitter at silent_podcasts. We're on YouTube at Silent Podcasts. We are on Twitch on Silent Podcasts. We have a ton of amazing content happening right now. Aside from all the things that we've mentioned, is forthcoming the right word that I'm looking for? Circle coverage, the challenge coverage. We currently have Survivor coverage. We have Big Brother Canada coverage that we talked about. We have Top Chef. Thank you. We have Saturday morning cartoons. We may have some X on the Beach coverage coming soon. You want it? We got it. So come check us out. Give us a follow, subscribe, leave a rating, leave some stars. We are all open for feedback. So please let us know what you want to hear. And there will no doubt be one of our amazing, talented podcasters that is willing and ready to talk about it. So let us know what you like. We're here to listen.
Not 5 stars, don't leave it though. Just saying.
Yeah, just don't. Only 5 stars. I actually heard iTunes only lets you submit 5-star ratings now. So you may as well just do that.
Yeah. There's another option.
Yeah. It's kind of like YouTube where they got rid of the downvotes or whatever, the thumbs downs. Like you can only
did?
Yeah, YouTube actually did. That's not true about iTunes, but it is true about YouTube. They got rid of you could still thumb things down, but you can't actually see how many times people thumbed things down.
Oh.
So, whatever.
Oh, such a sensitive generation. Everyone needs a trophy. All right. Katie, take us out of our inaugural. Why did I get a bull from? Fuck. Inaugural Stop Being Polite podcast.
Yes. Stop being polite. Start getting real. Thank you guys for listening to us. Follow Silent Podcasts. Listen to us on Cool Water Show if you like what you heard today. And have a great rest of your week. Thank you all for listening.
Catch you Saturday.
Bye.